everyone, and welcome to another Kickin with Sensei. Today's guest is London Savate's James Southwood, a British, European and World Champion in Savate. And you're very welcome, James.
Hi there.
Perfect. And could you just tell our audience a little bit about your background in martial arts?
Certainly. I've been, for the last 20 years, thereabouts, doing Savate. And Savate's a bit of an enigma in martial arts circles because not that many people have heard of it.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have met someone who's done it or crossed paths with a Savate fighter at least once. So it might be more relevant for me to explain to your audience a bit about Savate, and then with a test of their patience, a little bit about my own autobiography.
Yeah.
Savate literally means, and before anyone who's watching and is waiting for me to correct it, I've got one thing to correct from your introduction. Savate literally means an old shoe. And I often choose to explain it with that as the opening fact, because that's what we wear. So if I'm running a class, people need to turn up in shoes. It is, most simply put, it's kickboxing with shoes on, which changes the way the kicks are done because you can't use your knee or your shin. Yeah. And what I've said is a bit of an anachronism because Savate actually predates kickboxing in those words by at least a century. Okay. In terms of my own participation, I say I've been doing it for about 20 years. I'm British and world, but alas, 3 times European runner-up, never champion, at least at the time of recording.
So, and what first got you interested in martial arts and in particular Savate?
Okay, I worry that the reason I started is lost to history. I think I watched another episode on your channel in which you said that the Karate Kid was a bit of an influence on you for starting in martial arts. Yeah. For me, I'm going to say kickboxer. Remember with Jean-Claude Van Damme?
Jean-Claude Van Damme, yeah.
I watched it on holiday when it came out. I don't know, I'd have been 10 years old. And I didn't start martial arts until I was 20. But, you know, the film stuck in my mind. It's interesting what influences us. Yeah. But I couldn't tell you why exactly I chose to do it then. I don't remember going through it rigorously with myself. I probably did what a lot of people do. You choose the easiest one you see on the leaflet, the one that has the class on the date that you're free, and you go along. So it's a little bit easier to explain to you why I stayed or why I stuck around.
Yeah.
Because I went to that class, and I can remember it very vividly, the first Savate class I went to, and the person I was put with to box, I wanted to go back the next week to show him what was what. I wanted, he was explaining to me, oh, this is the punch, this is the kick. And I say, yeah, okay, I'm going to come back next week and I learned them and I'm going to punch you in the face. And I don't recall if I did, but, there's an early motivation for getting into it. I wanted to learn these things and get good at them. I hadn't got a sport. I was trained as a swimmer a little bit when I was much younger, and I didn't have a sport, and I was looking for one. And in these punches, these kicks, these movements, I found it.
Yeah, excellent. And what do you think the benefits are of martial training?
Well, there's a distinction that I'm making at the moment between, and a conversation or even an argument I have with some people between martial arts and sport. Yeah. And what I consider that what I do as a sport, or a combat sport, a fight sport, possibly an art, and I think it is a martial art, but I don't see it in quite the same way. So I see it as a lot of sports participation benefits. For example, you get to learn how to use and utilize your body, which keeps you fit. And in martial arts, in a way, it's the most complex sport out there because you're dealing with another human being kind of in their entirety. They're right in front of you, whether you grapple with them or you box with them or whatever you do, you kick. It's a complex equation always. And what I like about having trained this is that it never gets any easier. I can be up against a beginner in a tournament and it's almost as difficult as anybody else because they're still moving, trying to hit me. I'm trying to stay on my feet, keep my lead, do all the things I know how to do while someone's punching me in the face. So I think the main benefit is this learning how to conduct oneself in the presence of another human being, and learning how you influence them and how they influence you. That I think is the biggest benefit. You're choosing a very interactive sport, so you better learn how to interact with your body, with your mind, with your behavior, all of these aspects. For me, it goes less on a self-defense basis. I get a lot of people who want to come along and say, is this good for self-defense? And I'm never quite sure what they mean, because are you routinely assaulted in the street? Are you getting into fights every Saturday night? If you are, I think I need to recommend a different course of treatment. This is a sport, and it will teach you self-confidence. So there's another benefit. If you start to learn about how you handle yourself in someone else's presence, you start to learn the sort of self-confidence that will help you out in a self-defense situation, even though it's not straightforwardly described as self-defense. So that's why I see the benefits as being.
Excellent. And I've seen a video recently on your channel now about sparring. And do you think it's important to realize that there is different levels of sparring, that it doesn't have to be full contact all the time?
Yes, I quite like that. I do the variant of Savate that's called ASO, which is no force sparring, which means that I could meet up with you and we could have a sparring match, and at no point would I try and hurt you, and at no point I hope would you try and hurt me. So we can, all of the camaraderie that you get, and I heard someone else on your channel talking about, even when you've been going at someone full out, you still, bump fist at the end and have a pint with them and say, you're my friend. I think that's helped out when we haven't been trying to damage each other in the meanwhile, or at least I find that in my case. I'd like it if I can train with someone or fight with them, and then we come out and no one's hurt. Yeah, I hope. If accidents happen and it's a contact sport, so things, you do get hit. But sparring, and this is kind of a message I want to get out there. Sparring doesn't have to be getting smashed in the face every time we train. Yeah. It can be a good, fun way of moving, training, kicking, punching, smiling without the damage if you train carefully. And you're a bit lucky, I've got to say that.
Yeah, definitely. I've been on the unlucky side of it, but
I hope not too much.
No, well, I learned to block very quick, so it worked. But I know you have a great YouTube channel out there and a lot of technique and a lot of issues such as the sparring and getting your point across in that. But do you think technology is playing a big part in martial arts these days, and combat sports, of course?
I think so. It's been a surprise to me. We're speaking about a year after the COVID restrictions first started to come into play, and the martial arts community scrambled over a course of a few days last March to put everything they did online. And I wouldn't have said that you could learn my sport on a video online until I tried it. Yeah. I've been teaching for what? Well, up to last year, it would have been, 16, 17 years. And I just have lesson plans in me. So when you pointed a camera at me, I just could repeat the lesson plans, go with it. And we're kind of a privileged point in our history that everyone has got a phone or a device or something that means they can record and watch anyone doing anything. So over the last year, I've been able to train with, in inverted commas, experts in my sport from all around the world because they record what they're doing. That is helping to spread this knowledge around, and you can choose to copy and to emulate people that you've never met before on video. And, I very much hope that some people are getting value out of watching what I do. I just film out in my garden because we're not allowed to go anywhere else at the moment. Yeah. But you can still construct a scenario. I'm defending a jab, I'm stepping to my left, I'm counter-attacking. If you've got a bit of imagination and you want to move your body, I think technology can really help you to develop anything you want to develop in martial arts.
definitely. And do you have a favorite thing to train? Like, do you prefer sparring, or do you like teaching or competing more?
Oh, you've come up with three things that I enjoy. I'd be hard pressed to tell you between sparring, competing, and teaching. I I think I've come to like competition the most, and that's because I used to hate it. I can vividly remember in 2012 sitting in a hall in Plovdiv, Bulgaria, hating it and thinking, why am I doing this to myself? And it's an experience that's common to a lot of sports people. You sit there wishing that somehow it's going to be cancelled because you're so nervous you don't want to do it. And you think, this is my sport. You know, I chose to be here. I want to be here. How do I improve this situation so that this is actually the best part of my day or of my career, of my year, rather than the one I'm dreading? So I've learned how to turn around my competition experience to my advantage by enjoying those nerves, finding ways to make that, turn that into a way to compete more effectively. So I quite enjoy competition days because it's a very good way of keeping myself honest. You can train all year round, including like if you're training online. At the moment, I don't have a partner, of course, because I'm training on my own. COVID makes me. I don't know over the last 12 months how honest my sparring has been, my shadow work, my training, my fitness, because I don't get tested in that way. And in a competition, you really get tested. Yeah, you get put on the spot, and I think it's the skill or the attribute of a good martial artist or fighter to take on board what happens to you on those days and allow it to change you, allow it to influence what you're doing. So I like competition for that reason, but I do like sparring in club, and I do like teaching people, you know, watching them learn, watching them grow. All of these things are my favorite parts of the art.
Yeah, excellent. And as a competitor, what do you think the mindset of a fighter is?
Okay, that's a good question. I like the fact that you say mindset rather than psychology or spirit, you know, to confuse like a scientific or maybe a religious way of seeing it. Mindset is a good term, and I think it comes down to clear thinking. It comes down to clear thinking, like I said about the competition, the ability to see what is going on for what it is. Rather, it's very easy to lie, and it's the easiest person to lie to is yourself. And I've watched loads of people go through sparring and competition, and you realize they're making up the same excuses as before to accommodate what's going on. And the better fighters are the ones who have the mindset that says, I see this for what it is, I can think clearly, and I know what it means about me. It's the original sort of philosophic commandment, know yourself.
Yeah.
If you can use competition or your martial training or your sparring, whatever, to know yourself better, I think that's the number one mindset thing. The second one is courage. And by courage, I don't mean, you know, fighting full out into your last drop of sweat or your collapse or whatever. I mean a more existential courage, the courage to accept the unacceptable or to like what's going on, even if you don't like it. That is the mark of courage that I think a fighter needs. Self-knowledge and courage will get you through almost any competition, and a lot of your martial arts training, I think, is improved if you can work on those two attributes.
Excellent. And do you think we will see yourself as European champion in the future? Do you think you will get that title eventually?
I want to say yes, but that's because I'm a fighter, and you know, fighters never say no to a question like that.
Yeah.
I think I know what I've done wrong in my 3 finals, and my martial arts journey has been a lot about, I was going to say interrogating, but sort of adding to my own self-belief. I would have said to you 20 years ago that I've got lots of self-confidence. And then if I take honestly what's happened to me in certain situations, I say, actually, I wasn't confident enough in that moment. I should have gone for that more. And I think I could have won at least the most recent European final I was in if I'd been more self-confident, and I wasn't. And that's why I lost, and that's the result. But I like to think I've seen that now. The next time, if I'm presented with that opportunity, you know, if fortune grants me that chance, I'd like to think I take it.
Excellent. And what advice would you give someone young starting out in their combat sport or savate?
I would say two things. First, use it as a way to understand your own values. Martial arts, as you know, is a complex situation to be in, because you are, training and sparring. There's a lot of things going on, and I think it's wise to understand what is going on, so you know what value you have yourself to bring to it. That sounds vague. What I mean is, if you're competing, there's a few things going on. You're either trying to win, or you're trying to be a good sportsman, or you're trying to impress your coach, or you're trying to have camaraderie with your friends. There's all sorts of things going on in any given martial arts situation.
Yeah.
So I think to a newcomer, I'd say, be true to whatever value you want to most inhabit. So if you're a good sportsman, go for that. If you want to be a good teammate, if you want to understand yourself better, understand what values you have in each of these circumstances. And the second one, I said there were two, is have fun. Because at the end of it, and obviously I don't know what the end of it is, I hope I'd fight for many years more, but what I can see reflecting on 20 years is that it all comes down to how much did you get out of those moments in the ring, moments sitting ringside in Bulgarian gyms. Did you enjoy yourself? Did you have an experience that you'd say you'd like to repeat or pass on to someone else? Are these things good experiences for you? Have a good experience and know what values you're putting into it.
Excellent. Excellent. And I know you've been dedicated to savate for 20 years, but is there any other martial art or combat sport that you'd love to try out? And
I've done savate. I have cross-trained in Muay Thai. I went to a Thai boxing club for 5 years, and that taught me a whole load of things. There are loads of things I wasn't doing in my savate sparring that I had to do in the Thai sparring.
Yeah.
That teaches me something. I also spend a lot of time in boxing gyms because I like them as spaces. They are really good places where you see a lot of discipline, a lot of good coaching, and a lot of good technique. In savate, the punches are the same as what we call boxe anglaise, English boxing. So if you go to a boxing gym, you're learning the exact same technique you need for savate. You would then need to apply it to a situation in which you're kicking, but maybe you can do that on your own time. So I've been to boxing gyms and Thai gyms. I've also spent some time doing kendo combat. Not much, but I've twirled a cane around a few times, and I quite like the form of that. I did some Aikido once, so I've done a few other things in my savate career.
Yeah.
If you ask me what I want to do next, I usually answer that question with more savate, which isn't, I don't think, a limiting answer. It's because there are all sorts of gyms all over the world I haven't set foot in, and you don't know what that guy is going to teach you. You might step foot in that gym and someone changes your understanding of the game or the understanding of a kick. And I like the fact that when I go to Paris and I go to a gym, even as a world champion, they will still say, this kick, not good enough, you must do it this way. And you think, okay, I've learned something new. So there's always something to learn.
excellent. And finally, James, where can people find you online and find out more about savate? Okay,
I've got a YouTube channel and I'm trying to build up some savate content. Like I said at the top of the interview, we're trying to explain it to more people who've seen it as an enigma. So YouTube, London Savate. And I've also got an online training academy, the London Savate World Academy, where all of my lessons are stored and people can train along with me every week, see the videos. I've got, I think, quite a comprehensive now set of lessons. So those are the two primary places to find me. If your audience want to come and find out more.
Definitely. I'll put links to this description there too. And it was a pleasure having you on, James.
Thank you very much for inviting me.